That was the essence of our vision, to take period tracker as kind of a entrance point, a driver of retention, and then to build a big platform with deep knowledge and insight based on that. It was vision from the very beginning. We have had thousands and thousands experiments, and at any moment we have between 200 to 300 of active experiments, and these experiments have had immense impact on metrics. When we started optimizing our onboarding and paywall, we started from conversion to trial 2%, and now it's maybe 16, 17, 18%. It means that we increase conversion 800% because of such experimentation. Flow became the single product at the market, not just with good retention, but also with good monetization and sustainable monetization. And this way, Flow became the biggest health app in the world.
Welcome to Subversive, a podcast dedicated to sharing stories from the best consumer subscription apps in the world. We'll bring you lessons for how to grow your consumer subscription business, including insights and inflection points that led to exponential growth from leaders at category-defining companies and innovative startups. Let's get into the show. My guest today is Dmitry the co-founder and CEO of Flow, which helps women monitor their menstrual cycles, predict fertile days, and track pregnancies. Flow recently raised a $200 million Series C round at a valuation over $1 billion, making it one of the largest and most successful women's health apps in the world. In this episode, I talked to Dmitry about what inspired him and his brother to launch Flow in 2015, about why category-leading retention rates have been the key to Flow's success, and about the company's recent decision to launch Flow for Partners in 2023. All right, welcome, Dmitry, to the Subversive podcast. I'm excited to talk to you about Flow today. This is an episode I've been looking forward to for a long time. And let's get started with just a little bit of background on you and the unusual backstory that led up to Flow's founding in 2015.
Hello, Phil, and thank you for inviting me. And as you see now, we are making this record from our office in London, and it's the Tower of London behind me. But originally, I'm from Belarus, and I spent most of my life in Belarus, and Flow was founded in Belarus. And our journey was quite long and interesting. We started from growing potato and gathering mushrooms to sell, and then we writing articles together with my brother. Then we worked for 10 years for book publishing, and then we switched to apps. And last 16 years or so, we have been doing mobile apps, and we were doing that quite successfully. And we have Flow, which is the biggest health app in the world, but also we have had 5 or 6 exits up to this moment, and some pretty decent stories, like, for example, Lenza, what was the most monetizable and downloadable app 3 years back in App Store, like Simple is nutrition app with 150 million revenue, like some acquisitions which were done by Facebook and Google. It means that we got quite an experience, and it was quite a journey.
Yeah, well, congratulations on all your success, and it's been quite the path to get here. I guess one thing I want to start with, I listened to a couple of your other podcasts, and you tell this great story about growing up on a farm and how you were a mushroom picker, and that all the kids were sorted into either picking mushrooms or picking berries. And you picked berries if you wanted a stable income, and you picked mushrooms if you were more willing to take risk, but there was more upside. And so I guess what lessons did you learn in those early days about your own personality and maybe how you were wired to be a bit more entrepreneurial based on that experience? And I'm also curious what that sorting process looked like and how they knew, which kids should be doing which jobs.
I definitely learned that for me, interesting journey is more significant than the result. And because mushroom gathering was very risky way to get money, but it was very interesting because it's many kilometers of walking through the wood, new places, changing landscape, animals like birds, everything. And berries gathering, you just sitting on the same place and taking like berry by berry, berry by berry, and it's very predictable way to get your income, but also super boring. And I think I always have had preference to stay hungry, but to have a potential of interesting journey.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you were wired to be an entrepreneur from very early on. And so, fast forward to 2015, it sounds like you and your brother Yuri had been incubating a number of mobile apps, but Flow really starts to show some early signs of promise and traction. But at that time, there were already dozens, if not hundreds, of other period tracking apps in the App Store. And so, what was it that made Flow different in the early days? Or maybe another way of asking that question is, how did you manage to get early traction in such a crowded market?
We just celebrated several days back 10 years anniversary of first version of Flow. It was published October 3rd of 2015, and it was a big moment for deep reflections. And to be 100% honest, that time we didn't see or even dream like that Flow one day would become the biggest health app in the world with 80 million monthly active users, with almost 300 million in revenue, like unicorn, we should raise the biggest round in digital health last year. It was all these achievements. They would have been absolutely impossible to dream about 10 years back, and because of several reasons. And one very big reason that time it was impossible by any sane calculations to predict that app may earn so much. And why? Because that time a subscription business model didn't exist for apps altogether, maybe just for magazines. And all the people were paying for apps like $1 or $2, something not so significant sums of money, and pretty rarely. And to get to this sum Flow has now, and in Q4 this year, we will be pretty close to 300 million in an annualized run rate. We should have assumed not just the immense audience, but also that people would start paying not like $1-2, but dozens of bucks or even hundreds of bucks per year. And that time, when subscription business model was not even allowed for apps, it was completely impossible. It means that very often all our long-term projections, they're absolutely wrong because we can't predict such significant changes in landscape. And in 2015, it was impossible to predict that Apple would allow subscriptions for the apps. Then Netflix, Apple, and other big companies would double down on educating people about subscriptions, and then they would start raising prices gradually, and people would get habit to pay more and more and more for subscriptions. And it was a very long process. Even for Netflix and Spotify, they started from several bucks, and each year they were raising bucks by getting people to accept the idea that digital products may cost dozens or hundreds dollars per month. And I remember that time I was I came from book publishing, and the average book cost 10 or 20 bucks or 30 bucks. And I was almost kind of asking myself in despair why it's normal to pay for a book which has a cost of production $1, 20 bucks. But people don't want to pay the same sum of money for app, which is much more difficult and much more expensive to create. And but it's just a habit. It's just a habit to pay for something more or less. It's more people are kind of habitual when they think about is it expensive or not. Yeah, and then my reflection that that time we didn't have ambitious or dream or even wild dreams that Flow would become so big. And honestly, no benchmarks existed. But what we definitely understood even that time, that market lacked products with depth for this segment. And our motivation from the very beginning was to create not just a new period tracker, because at that time hundreds of period trackers existed, and nowadays thousands, and each month we register between 10 to 20 new period trackers. Our idea was much bigger than to create period tracker. And our idea was based on our previous experience from book publishing, because we published many books for mothers, for children about health, and we understood that this knowledge has huge demand, and this knowledge is rather scarce, and we almost had the idea almost like to convert content to digital form and to bring like a quality of knowledge we had in book publishing to the world of apps. And that time like apps with good and deep content and medically correct insights, they were very, very scarce. We called that like the world of period trackers, kind of like a pink calendars. And pink calendars means that they were very superficial and shallow products, and most of them and still didn't have ambition to go deeper than just to be a small utility. And it was the essence of our vision to take period tracker as kind of a entrance point, a driver of retention, and then to build a big platform with deep knowledge and insight based on that. And it was vision from the very beginning.
Well, and if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like that vision was very complementary with the state of the market at the time, because Apple and Google hadn't yet allowed many mobile apps to create mature subscription businesses that were really efficient. And then on the consumer psychology side of things, people weren't yet used to paying significant sums of money for subscriptions. And so you enter the market in 2015. And if I'm understanding you correctly, you gave away the period tracking for free, but you found ways to monetize deeper and more acute use cases that were associated with a woman's cycle. And that ultimately became the revenue driver for the business. But at the center, you have this highly retentive period tracking use case that a user did not have to pay for. Is that correct? And if so, what sort of advantages did that give you versus these more superficial competitors?
The story was more complicated and more interesting. When we started Flow, we had a very vague understanding how we would monetize this product. And at that time, it was not so much about subscription, because like subscriptions, it was even difficult to get technically allowance of Apple to have subscriptions in the app. It was possible, but quite difficult. It became like easy by default just from 2017. And that time we were thinking more about like telehealth, consultations, something like that. But it was very vague understanding. We just had feeling that like a good product should come first, and then we would figure out monetization. And it happened exactly this way, and very big luck that a subscription business model was unlocked, because without subscription business model, I don't see how it would be possible to build such a significant company. But I remember that it was also, even with subscription, it was a bit of a journey, because when we discussed to start monetizing part of our content and insights, we almost got a riot inside the team, because it was quite a wild idea for the moment at the beginning of 2018 or so, like to have subscription business model for apps like Flow. And now it's like 100% normal, but that time it was something had never been seen, and it was very unusual for people to think this way. But then, this business model became like a driver of our success, but also it became a driver of almost like a product quality, because what's unique about subscription business model that this business model is uniquely aligned the user's experience and needs. Because if experience is not good and the user is not happy, this user maybe would pay once and churn, and business model would not work. And it creates very natural incentives to make product better and better, and especially long-term experience for users, because it's a single way how to be successful, like a long-term in this business model.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you've heard me talk about this framework that I call the subscription value loop. And at the center of that is a unique and enduring core value promise. You're saying it needs to be enduring because, unlike a hardware product or an e-commerce model, it's not a one-time purchase, right? The user needs to continue getting value over time or they're going to churn. but it also needs to be unique. And you said that in the early days, there were all these other period tracking apps, but most of them were very superficial. So what were some of the core product innovations that you all invested in early on that allowed you to be different than those other products?
We had two big ideas, and both ideas were quite leap of faith, I would say, and quite contrarian for the moment. And the first idea was that, okay, we know that period trackers are very popular and they have good retention, and why not to use period tracker as kind of as a core product and surround period tracker by more sophisticated health features like articles about health, insights about health, like different patterns, chatbots, like everything users have nowadays in Flow. And users will start using app and continue using app because of period tracker, but also they would engage naturally to these more sophisticated health features. And we definitely knew, because of our experience from other apps and observations, that without this driver of retention, this ecosystem would not work. It's the same as like a Google Plus ecosystem. If you take out Gmail from this ecosystem, it would just crumble. But also, like, if it's just Gmail itself, it would not be like especially monetizable. Just ecosystem together, like Gmail plus all these apps and services connected with Gmail, is sustainable. And the same with this idea of surrounding Flow by more sophisticated health features. But also, our big decision was to put to the same app different modes for different stages of life, like separate mode for trying to conceive stage, for pregnancy, for perimenopause, for teens. And it was quite contrarian move, because at that moment, the common sense in the market and all competitors, they followed this common sense was like to create a standalone app for each user case for simplicity. But our thinking was that no, the most significant is to preserve long-term retention, and because of that, transition from stage to stage should be as smooth as possible. But again, we didn't know, like, would they really like transition from mode to mode. It was a leap of faith, and at that moment, the biggest question was like, would really like users of period tracker engage to all the sophisticated features around period tracker? And it was impossible to understand and predict that without building it. Almost kind of like we must have built it to see, and it was very expensive experiment, but it was right idea, and users engaged to these features, and the whole ecosystem started working very well. And because of that, Flow became the single product at the market, not just with good retention, but also with good monetization and sustainable monetization. And then flywheel of growth was unlocked, because monetization means just money to build even better product and to spend something for marketing, and then we are getting more users. More users means more money to make product even better and to spend even more for marketing, and it's like. And this way, like, Flow became the biggest health app in the world.
Well, and the way that fits into my mental model, I think the reason that the conventional wisdom is keep your consumer products simple is because consumer attention spans are so short. And so from an acquisition standpoint, if your product is too complicated, people won't know how to use it and they'll move on to the next thing. But some of the most successful consumer subscription apps, let's take Duolingo, for example, or Strava, started with a single use case. So for Duolingo, that was language learning. For Strava, that was cycling. But then as they really gained traction, they were able to expand into adjacent use cases. And so for Duolingo, that is now reading and math and music and chess. And for Strava, it was running and other outdoor activities. It sounds like in your case, you had this two-pronged approach because period tracking was such a natural acquisition use case. It's something that literally every woman beyond the age of puberty experiences. And so it was a great, simple way to acquire a new customer. But then because the retention of a product that's built around something as unavoidable as your monthly cycle is so high, you can bolt on these additional use cases that people have more potential to pay for. And you brought up conception, pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause. And so that's played into not only longer term free user retention, but also increase average revenue per user because you're able to convert more subscribers with those use cases. Let's talk about some of the growth playbooks that propelled Flow's early growth. I'm sure word of mouth was part of it, but you also brought up some of these articles that you all were putting out there with really interesting data and insights that were spinning off of the products you had built. How did that contribute to organic growth through SEO or through word of mouth from people talking about that content?
We have had really several stages of growth. And the first stage of growth was that we just created like a very good, simple but very good product. And this product was highly rated, maybe 4.9. Mm-hmm. And because of that, App Store and Google Play started to promote this product. And maybe in 1 year, we got like positions number 1 or number 2, like for all significant keywords. And it was just like driven by quality of product and nothing else. And of course, we had some optimizations for keywords, like in descriptions, but ultimately it was just driven by quality of product and that's the fact that we had 4.9 rating. But then something more interesting happened. Because of good retention, we started gaining active audience. Mm-hmm. And when active audience became significant, word of mouth unlocked. And nowadays, we still have mostly organic traffic, but most of our organic traffic is driven by brand awareness and word of mouth, but not of this generic search. And my claim that really there is just a single reliable way nowadays for apps to get organic traffic is to have retention and to grow active audience. Because you may start from paid user acquisition, but with good retention, app would get a significant audience, and significant audience would unlock word of mouth, and gradually organic share of traffic will start growing. And it means that retention is the key to organic traffic, and people just don't. It's very rarely understood how like retention is correlated with organic traffic, because it's a single reliable way to get organic traffic nowadays. Because optimizations in App Store difficult, like optimizations in TikTok easier but still difficult. But if a product has good retention, then growth of audience will inevitably bring organic traffic in form of word of mouth. It's almost inevitable. And then we didn't have any paid user acquisition or any marketing 2018-19, at least in significant sums. And when our monetization became successful, we started spending money in paid user acquisition, and now we spend a lot. I believe this year our marketing budget is 70 million or so, like 70. And we are getting maybe half of our growth because of paid user acquisition and or semi-paid, like for example, TikTok is I talk about TikTok as a semi-paid channel because it's a mix of paid and organic. But still, like we still mostly growing organically.
Yeah, well, and I think that's so well said that retention is the foundation of everything else. And people often don't step back and think about how so much of word of mouth is really just driven by consumers spending enough time with a product and getting enough value from it that they then feel compelled to tell family members, friends, and colleagues about it.
It's not what we observed is not even linear, because when like one of your friends would say that I use product X, you say, no, interesting. But when you see two your friends would say I use this product for 3, then you would inevitably try this product. It means that it's almost kind of exponential, but not linear. It means that with growth of active audience, word of mouth is growing exponentially, but not linearly, because of this effect of kind of peer pressure, I would say.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Well, and a lot of marketers will tell you it's an overused and overgeneralized rule of thumb, but it's sort of like the average consumer needs 10 brand impressions before they'll remember and appreciate your brand. And my guess is it's similar with word of mouth. It's one thing if you have one friend tell you, hey, you've got to go try this app called Flow. But if you have 3, 4, 5 of your friends telling you this is the greatest women's health app out there, you're much more likely to trust it and give it a real shot, and then much more likely to turn around and tell your own friends and family members about it. So you've posted on LinkedIn and you've talked about how more than 50% of Flow's MAUs and more than 50% of your subscription revenue is coming from users who've been on the app for more than a year, who installed the app more than a year ago. So let's just start with, How does Flow maintain such high long-term retention rates? Because every consumer app wants retention rates that are that high, but we all know retention is the hardest metric to move. What's been the key to Flow's success?
Part of it is just a naturally high retention of period trackers. And all period trackers, they have a relatively high retention. It's just nature of user case. And there are not so many such user cases in health and fitness category. I would say period trackers, step trackers, like everything what's connected with devices, maybe a bit sleep trackers, and pretty much the end of story. And this like a potential user cases, and you may see that like what's common among all these cases, something what is natural and inevitable and happens without effort, or even I would better say without choice, because like you're working anyway, like a period would come anyway, like a sleep would be anyway, and it creates like natural foundation for good retention. Other cases in health fitness category, they're much more nuanced, and because of that, it's difficult to find products in health and fitness category with substantial audience, because Flow has 80 million, then like maybe like a Strava may have maybe, I don't know, 20 million or so of monthly active users, but all other apps, they rarely, maybe 3 or 4 of them would reach 10 million, but worldwide among all apps. And the rest of them, they're below 10 million, despite they may have like dozens of millions sometimes of installs per year because of big user acquisition. Why? They're not retentive the same way as like a chain of gyms would sell like 100 more memberships than they have places, because they know that people would not visit it, because people are people.
That even, in my mind, that plays back in your point around word of mouth, because step one, you need strong retention so that people are using the product enough to talk about it. But then step two, there are so many apps where the use case is so episodic that people are only going to be talking about it at certain times of the year. And fitness is a great example of that, because so many people, they make their New Year's resolution, they go to the gym for a few weeks, and then they peter out. But in the case of Flow,
that's exaggeration. I would say that by my observation, for 2 days.
yeah. You're more of a realist than I am. But yeah, that's right. And so if the window of opportunity to get people to talk about your product is that narrow, then it just makes it much more difficult to get the flywheel going. But in the case of Flow, you have this use case that applies to just about every woman in the world, just about any time of the year. And so it helps to get that organic flywheel going.
But like what's interesting about health and fitness category, very often retention of subscription in health and fitness category is higher than retention of usage. What like sounds like a phenomena, but this phenomena exists absolutely the same way in case of gyms. For example, many people, they will just like renew gym membership all the time, because they hope that next month or after Christmas they would definitely change life, and for them to stop paying for subscription, it almost kind of I'm desperate, like no chance, like I'm surrendered. And and here's the same, like sometimes it's the same pattern, but ultimately really successful products, they should have both, and like retention of usage and retention of subscription.
Yeah, I agree. And you certainly do have both. And it sounds like some of that is just built into the use case. But are there any particular experiments or A/B tests that the Flow team has run in recent years that have had an outsized impact on either MAU retention or paying subscriber retention?
We have had thousands and thousands of experiments, and at any moment we have between 200 to 300 of active experiments, and these experiments have had immense impact on metrics. The most interesting number that when we started optimizing our onboarding and paywall, like we started from conversion like to trial like 2%, and now it's like I don't know, maybe 16, 17, 18%. It means that we increase conversion 8 800% because of such experimentation. This is pretty much the same product. It means that yes, such experiments may be really impactful, but I would say that retention, and especially long-term retention, is the most difficult metric to move. In our case, we definitely see like very significant correlation between how active people use product, how many active days they have, and how good is long-term retention and monetization as well. And I would say that the biggest experiment which influenced like retention and it's just like a quality of the whole product like in combination. It was not something like, okay, we changed like a color of button and then retention got a huge impact. But also maybe the most impactful among all decisions was to have all these modes in the same product, because we are just not losing these users when they move from stage to stage, and it saves like a lot of long-term retention. And in the case of Flow, long-term retention means like years. And yeah, but also like it's a very interesting question how we think about retention and what is good retention. And I have very different point of view than most investors about retention. And when I try to understand is it retention good or not, for me, like absolute number of like, okay, like retention, is it like 40% after 90 days, 30% or 10% is absolutely meaningless. What I'm trying to see is shape of the curve. And what I'm trying to see is any evident fluttering in this shape. Because some products, they may have this plateau, like really like not so high, maybe 5%, 10%, but because all the such products may be very mass market products and they may pump many users, they ultimately, it's almost kind of like a gold mine. Ultimately, they would gain a lot of such users, and this core user base would become huge, and this product will become big. And ultimately, my question about retention is not a absolute number, but more like two questions. What's the shape of the curve, and how the shape of the curve looks long term? And second question is, how big is the TAM? It means that how many users may try this product. Is it possible like to mine this gold of core like engaged users? And when answer to these questions yes, to both of these questions, even with relatively low retention, this company may become quite significant.
So a lot of people will point to B2B SaaS businesses where net revenue retention can be over 100% because you can land and expand. You can acquire a new customer and then either upsell them into higher price subscription tiers and or add more seats, which leads to net revenue retention being over 100%, because even if some users churn, your most valuable users end up becoming more and more valuable over time. So this idea of relative net revenue retention that you've talked about, if I'm understanding correctly, it's as you get into year 2 subscribers, year 3 subscribers, year 4 subscribers, the retention rate from year to year gets higher and higher. Because once you've been using a product and paying for it for 3 or 4 years, the chances that you're going to churn are very, very low. And so the relative net revenue retention in the out years gets very high. Can you say a little bit more about why that metric is so important?
What's interesting is that most of investors, they don't understand consumer subscription business model altogether. And they can't make right decisions because they're trying to apply standards of SaaS business model to consumer subscription, and they're making very wrong conclusions. Because, for example, they say, okay, if retention of annual subscriptions is lower than 40%, this business is bad. But it doesn't work the same way in case of consumer subscription as in case of B2B SaaS. Because, for example, in case of B2B SaaS, if a customer has churned, it's almost impossible to get this customer back. And it means that like churned customer is like his lost customer. Consumers like behave absolutely differently. If you're like a customer of Netflix, you may buy Netflix for one specific show, then you switched off Netflix for 6 months, and another instant show you switched it back. It means that they like have this like back and forth behavior. They continue like come in like and renew subscription when they see value or see discount, for example. And in case of Flow, we have ton of such win-back customers is driven by different situations. For example, they may switch to another mode, they may have specific needs, they may get like very good discount, but I believe maybe 25% or so of our subscriptions comes from such behavior. And second, very interesting behavior that in companies like Flow or Spotify, they are getting conversions for a very long time, not immediately. It means that some of users, they install app, but then they may use this app for years without paying. And then when the right moment came, then they would convert. And because it's like if you just analyze like flow metrics from like looking on by standards of business SaaS, this business would be not especially attractive. But then if you look on revenue retention, it means if you take cohort of users we acquire this month, and then you look like how much money we would get from this cohort first 12 months, then next 12 months, and then next 12 months, it would look something like 100, 70, 70. It means that starting from year 3, there is no revenue churn because, of course, like core users stay, but also like we are getting win-backs of users who churn, and more users convert with time. And this like kind of stabilization of revenue or long-term from cohort happens. And also, we even see some growth of net revenue retention. For example, year 4 to year 3, it means year 4 may be bigger than year 3. And why? Products become better. We invest like just like the product like $70 million per year to make it better. And the product is getting better, and users see more reasons to convert. And even if they don't pay, or if they paid before, they convert again. And because of that, like a revenue from cohort of year 4 would be bigger than like a revenue from the same cohort of year 3. But again, it's impossible to see if you just analyze like a retention of subscription or like or any other like a metric from business SaaS.
Yeah, well, and I think part of the reason that investor attitudes on this is oversimplified is because if you look at the vast majority of consumer subscription apps, RevenueCat has this stat that more than 80% of trial starts happen within the first 24 hours, which usually means the first session. And a lot of smaller consumer subscription app startups are optimizing for day 8 ROAS. Why day 8? Because they have a 7-day trial. So they're trying to pay back their ad spend within 8 days just to make sure that their unit economics work. But the very best apps, the Duolingos, the Stravas, the Flows of the world, they have a number of the characteristics you're describing. They have high reactivation rates, meaning even if users churn, they'll often come back to the product later on. And they also have this longer tail of free users who end up converting into a trial or subscription weeks, months, or even years after they start using the product. So that brings me to one other important question, which is, as a freemium app, how do you balance free monthly active user retention with monetization? Because obviously there's a tension there between making sure you're leaving your free users happy enough that they continue to stick around and use the product, but then also you're converting and retaining enough of your subscribers to generate revenue that you can reinvest back into the business.
It's always a balance, and because of that, we always have retention as a health metric. It means that our monetization experiments should not harm retention, or like monetization improvements should be really significantly bigger than harm to retention. And again, we would not tolerate significant harm to retention because we believe that growth of active audience and loyalty of users is ultimately our growth flywheel, and our organic traffic depends on that a lot, and all future monetization and overall even mission of Flow depends on that. And recently I even rechecked are we doing good or bad with that. I asked to prepare for me on the same graph kind of like a curves of all monthly cohorts for last 5 years. It's very crowded graph, you may assume, because there are many curves like that, like on the same graph, like 50 or 60 of them. And now we kind of in the middle of this kind of flock of curves. It means that kind of we can't say that we harmed retention too much. Like it means that like we had moments when it was worse, we had moments when it was better, but now we're exactly at the middle of this kind of like a family of curves, and it means that like approximately we stayed with the same retention for last 5 years or so, despite more sophisticated monetization because of this controls.
And I'm sure part of that is just a function of the product getting better, which you mentioned earlier. Even if you're pushing a premium product harder, if the product itself has gotten better, then you can maintain the same retention rates even with more aggressive
We have very explicit goal that our free product should be better than other free products at the market. It means that when we are making our product decisions, we also not like looking just on retention, but also we are thinking, okay, would be possible that users would switch out of Flow because other products are better, and we're also like limiting a lot in monetization based on this logic.
Yeah, because that then has huge impacts on acquisition costs, both because your paid ads are going to work much better if your free product is strong, but also because you get more word of mouth, which leads to more organic growth.
Organic traffic is super significant to make a company attractive for investors and to achieve significant valuation. I would say that without dominance of organic acquisition in Flow, and it would have been impossible to raise as successful as Flow did, because investors, they don't like businesses which depends too much on paid user acquisition, because they think that is not especially sustainable. And I think they're right, because this platform, they're changing algorithm all the time. Traffic is getting like more and more expensive. It means that long term businesses which depends on paid user acquisition are really difficult to predict. But organic traffic also depends what type of organic traffic, because Flow is sustainable because of most of our organic traffic is brand-driven and awareness-driven traffic. Because in the United States, 25% of all women younger than 40 are monthly active users, and our unaided brand awareness is like 70%. Like Flow is default solution, and because of that, like Flow is installed by default, and it's very sustainable. But for example, if our traffic would still be mostly because of generic search in App Store like period tracker, for keywords like period tracker, it would not be sustainable, because one small change in algorithm of App Store and we would lose this traffic. And like just 1 month back, like many companies like lost half of traffic because Google just switched like to new form, like to this AI search, and like immense number of businesses like lost half of traffic because all growth machine was built just on Google and optimization for Google. And in our case, it's much more sustainable because most of our organic traffic is driven by like word of mouth and overall brand awareness and the status of default solution.
Well, and it all goes back to having a great product and owning a strong brand in the minds of your customers, which you all have done a remarkable job of. And that brings me to the last topic I want to talk about, which is the recent launch of Flow for Partners. So you and your brother founded this product that is now the #1 digital product for women's health in the world in 2015. But recently, I think it was in October 2023, you launched Flow for Partners that actually allows men and husbands and romantic partners to be part of Flow's product themselves and be able to better understand their partner's cycle for things like conception and pregnancy tracking. So what inspired you and your team to expand the appeal of Flow to men? And walk me through what that launch looked like a couple of years ago.
Conversation with users, because we listen all the time to feedback of users, and we have many user research, and sometimes we are doing research, okay, and what you need from Flow, what Flow lacks, and the most significant demand was that, I also want like my partner to be educated or like about different questions in female health and how I'm doing, like, and we listened to users, and also we saw successful apps like Pairs at the market. It was like not the most significant that we saw this app. The most significant was that like when we proposed to users to choose among maybe 20 different features, it was the most desirable feature, like in our user research. But then our approach, like to build this feature, was very different than our competitors tried to do, because what our competitors tried, they just shared kind of like a statuses about what stage of cycle now, like, or like what symptoms were tracked, And our approach was more kind of like educate partners and provides them insight and help them to be like kind of a better and more supportive and partners like it's more kind of like it's much more based on education and insights rather than just sharing what's going on with your partner. And it's like kind of a product itself, and it has ton of content and even like quizzes, like almost mini games for the pair. And this feature is quite popular, and also this feature is super viral. For example, we got a TikTok post about partner mode in Latin America, which got 2 million likes and 200,000 shares. And then like several dozen of similar posts. And in several days, we got 100 million views in TikTok for free and 350,000 installs. And it was completely organic. Overall, like for Flow, world TikTok is very significant, and we are getting 15% of our traffic from TikTok and organically. But this case was very interesting, and it also shows that features also should be understood not just from prospect of user experience was by default, but also from point of view of marketability. Like, is this feature good and interesting enough to become viral in TikTok, like to become like a point of attention in paid acquisition or in media campaigns, and sometimes like this effect of such features may be much more significant because of this marketability of such feature rather than because of direct impact for current product. And in case of partner mode, both elements are significant, but it's a very marketable feature for Flow.
It's very marketable, and it goes back to some of the key criteria you talked about before, right? It significantly expands TAM because previously it was half the world's population that Flow could be relevant for, roughly half. Now, arguably, you've doubled your potential market size. Number two, there's certainly a ton of organic acquisition and word of mouth potential because now you have men entering the chat or women who are romantic partners of other women. And third, I would imagine that it also benefits retention because now if you have a couple who is both using Flow for things like conception, getting pregnant, managing a pregnancy, or dealing with menopause, right? Like now you have to have two users turn rather than one for you to lose a potential paying customer. And so I would imagine it has all three of those
influence on all metrics, including metrics of retention and engagement. It's it's very interesting, very powerful feature for Flow.
So what have the early results looked like? To the extent you can share, what percentage of Flow's current MAUs and subscribers are partners, and how do you expect this to change in the coming years?
Now we have more than 2 million partners as active users, and it's growing. I think it's very realistic to expect that maybe 10% or so of users would be actively connected with partners, and what would be maybe 10 million in case of Flow. It is quite significant because 10 million as an independent app, it would be like app which would be definitely in top 10 the biggest health and fitness apps standalone.
It's very exciting, and congratulations again on all of the success and all of the momentum. And as a partner myself, I've been married for 11 years and have 2 kids, and sadly we missed the boat on Flow when we were having our children. But as we enter other stages of life, I'm sure that
this year we launched like our new mode for perimenopause. And perimenopause is super underserved segment, and because of different reasons like cultural, historical, and this segment is super successful. We just launched it, but this year I think we'll have already 3 million users and maybe 25-30 million in revenue from this mode. And also this mode shows the highest propensity to pay among all our modes.
Wow.
And all this like kind of like we had the research which showed that and it's different in comparison with other modes because all our other modes, like pregnancy mode, they had competition. Some apps existed and were popular when we were launching like this product. And in case of perimenopause, there are no big solutions women have awareness about. And pretty much like kind of we establishing Flow as a default solution for perimenopause, and quite successful, I would say. And it's very interesting example like how this platform may be very successfully expanded to new audiences and new values.
Yeah, well, and you've gained so much trust and momentum with your younger users who have grown with you. And so as they reach perimenopause, I'm sure that even if there were competition, they would be looking to Flow. And it sounds like there isn't very much competition, which is nice.
Yeah, Flow is super huge among younger users. United States, among like 18, 20 years old women, like almost 40% are monthly active users. And United Kingdom, almost 50% of all women are in this age group are monthly active users. But we have much smaller share among women older than 35, and with our like a health additional health solutions and with Perimode, it's a very big hope that soon we will have as significant popularity among 35 plus year old women as among this younger cohort category of users.
Yeah, it's a huge growth opportunity, and it's also solving a very real need. So I'm glad you're investing in that area. Let's get to our lightning round. We'll finish up here with a few quick questions. The first one I always like to ask is just, what would you say is the best part about working at Flow, and what's one thing that you would change?
It's super meaningful because there are plenty of companies with huge user base or hundreds of millions in revenue, but I don't know any company with so significant positive impact on life and health of users, because we're improving health and health education of hundreds of million women and around, and dozens of million babies were born with help of Flow. We have, for example, in the United States, 40% of all women who are trying to conceive use Flow. Like 30% of pregnancies are supported by Flow. And we always have been super focused on medical accuracy. We have a significant medical team, medical board, and we have published many scientific papers, including 3 papers in Nature. And this feeling of this immense impact is the most significant and interesting part of this job, and it's part of our mission. And I'm especially proud that we're trying to provide Flow for free for women who can't pay, and we open Flow for free in more than 60 countries, like in poor countries like Nigeria, for example. And we already have gifted 27 million subscriptions. 27 million subscriptions
Wow.
are already gifted to women in need. Yeah, and we have published papers, and we scientifically proved that it has a positive impact on health knowledge and health outcome.
Yeah, it's a very inspirational mission, and I can only imagine how much impact it's already had and will have in the future. Anything you would change about the company, the culture, or anything else?
I think everything has kind of a good and bad sides. It's always 2 sides of coins. For example, Flow is a super data-driven and thoughtful company, and we analyzing everything very thoroughly, experimenting. But sometimes I feel that maybe we just need kind of to be more brave, just in making bets and move faster, because sometimes I feel that maybe we are getting too much in this endless checking, A/B testing, analysis paralysis. Maybe this one, not fully, but maybe for 20% of our resources, maybe just okay, it's a good vision, good intuition. Let's just try, but let's do that fast.
Yeah, it's one of the inherent challenges of getting larger because you have so much data that it's easier to just sit and analyze it. But you got to maintain that culture of being an early stage startup, and sometimes you just got to make a decision and go with it. What would you say is the worst product decision you've ever made at Flow, and what did you learn from it?
I have my own philosophy about that, and we have failed thousands of experiments, and I'm quite sure that we wasted 75% of resources we spent for development, and what probably should be measured in hundreds of millions up to this date. But it was a way to learn what doesn't work to find what works. And because of that, I can't say that like we failed like 70% of our work, and we wasted hundreds of millions because of that. But without that, it would be impossible to find what works. And because of that, I would say we didn't have the single bad decision is a decision which was not reflected about. Even like if you have like a proper reflection and your next step is more informed than previous step, then even this bad decision was right decision.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very growth mindset approach. And I agree. Like if we knew which A/B tests were going to succeed and which were going to fail, our jobs would be much easier. But the reality is even the best teams generally have at least 50% failure rates on their experiments. And so the trick is to
50%.
just experiment at high
I would happy to have 50% of failure rate. I think we have 20% of success rate.
Well, and I've often told my teams, like if our hit rate is too high, it means we're not taking big enough swings and we're not taking enough risk. And so it's all about learning. And I really like that answer. So next one, you've talked about how retention is often a function of use case. So if you weren't building Flow, what is another product or product category within consumer that you'd be excited to build for given the retention profile?
It's a pretty interesting question because consumer habits they're changing now like super drastically because of ChatGPT and other LLMs. And we have seen that for smaller extent in 10 years of Flow existence, and we had to adapt. For example, when we started Flow, people were still reading like long articles. And content of Flow was in form of articles. Then, because of Snapchat, Instagram, like people stopped reading, and we had to transform our content to form of stories. What was very wild, but at that moment, like to have like stories in health app, and now it looks super natural. Then like people stopped reading even short content, and it was a transition to short videos and maybe like some interesting because of TikTok, and some interesting phenomena like short dramas, for example, emerged because of that. And now it's like the biggest change we need to adapt, and this change that like the people they expect to get like answer in ready form. It means that they don't expect any exploration, and because they don't expect any exploration, then it's like our product also should adapt. And now we are building like all the kind of Flow intelligence when it will be possible to talk with Flow like with ChatGPT. We spend significant resource to make it medically accurate. But the idea of this that I don't know, but I just know that like when consumer habits change so much, it's necessary to adapt a lot and very like a new generation of products will come. And we see that in some categories, for example, in health and fitness, now it's a huge wave of AI-based calorie trackers. And we had like an idea to create such kind of app like almost 10 years back with my brother. But that time we tried to use kind of like a cheap labor behind the app, like just to make like to recognize what's on the plate, because technology didn't exist. But the idea that it's enough to make like a photo and then like it would be recognized, we had this idea 10 years back. But it didn't work properly because it was huge lab between like when this photo is done and when result was gotten. But now this technology arrived, and this idea which we had like 10 years back now implemented in hundreds of apps like AI, very successful. And I don't know, but what I know that when a big change in technology happens and when big change in consumer happens change, it's a huge opportunity to do the same but better, and that's a huge opportunity for new companies to come to old segments. And what we don't want in Flow is to be disrupted by such newcomers, and because of that we are trying to build and change our product by ourselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And in consumer in particular, I think when technology takes something that previously required a lot of work and makes it significantly easier. And the example you gave was, okay, now I don't have to enter everything I ate. I can just snap a photo and the AI will automatically detect and analyze what the macros look like. That can take a market that was previously not viable and suddenly make it viable. So that gets me to my next question, which is, how do you think AI will change the world of women's health over the next 2 to 3 years? Or maybe, since it's the lightning round, a simpler version of this is, what is one very important change that you think AI will have on Flow or other women's health apps?
Bigger change may happen in the world of kind of casual apps, not like medical devices and not like a medicine, because medicine is super difficult regulatory barriers, and everything is changing super slowly in real medicine. And I think in real medicine, in real like health, in 2-3 years, probably not so much. In case of apps, many things might change because of the biggest driver will be this change of consumer habits and consumer expectations because of ChatGPT, and it paves the path to new generation of products, and the essence of these products will be that users will expect to get answer or kind of a prepared answer without any exploration. It will be the biggest change which will happen because of that, because it's the biggest change in comparison of ChatGPT with Google. What's the biggest change? It's like you're getting just your answer and not making any exploration, and the same they will expect from apps.
Yeah, instant gratification and also hyper personalization. So not just getting any generic answer, but getting an answer that's tailored to your unique needs. Well, the last question I'd love to wrap up with here, you've mentioned on other podcasts how important you think it is, especially in the latter part of life, to devote part of your time to giving. And so I'm curious if there is a particular cause or set of causes that you are passionate about, and how you find time or resources to give to that cause.
Now my main passion is Flow, and it occupies everything, and I don't have any time and energy for any other passions, honestly. I even don't have time to fish, what's my biggest hobby. When I used to live in Belarus and I emigrated 5 years back, I founded a charity with a mission to educate children in villages in STEM, in computers, robotics, and we were opening like kind of educational centers, and we opened several dozens of them, and it was quite meaningful and inspirational task at the time, because in countries like Belarus, it's a chance to have better life, like to learn how to code, like to have career in tech, because it's like pretty much in such countries like Belarus, pretty much it's the single like choice which gives like a relatively high income and relatively good job. And then in Belarus, political crisis happened. I moved out from Belarus. All charities were closed in Belarus, including my charity. But it was very interesting and very meaningful experience. And I think, and what I definitely learned from this experience, that charity is more difficult than business, like to do a charity efficiently, because it's like the same as business, but with many difficulties business just doesn't have. But I think that when my page with Flow is closed, I think I will be back to such like meaningful activities. I liked them a lot, especially when it was very personal, when I saw like a very concrete result and very concrete influence on lives of these children from a village.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And education in particular is one of those causes that is so powerful because it compounds over time. My wife has spent most of her career in the nonprofit sector, and specifically on youth education and workforce development. And it's one of these things where, as you empower the next generation to succeed, it just has these compounding effects that benefits generations and generations, and has broader impacts on society. Well, this has been a real pleasure, Dmitry. Thank you so much for coming on. I knew it would be a great episode, and it has been. Any parting words you want to leave with as we wrap up here?
Recently, we celebrated 10 years anniversary of Flow, and I reflected would have been my single advice to myself like 10 years back. My single advice to myself 10 years back would be don't listen critics, just move forward.